I'm Paul Wahlbeck, Dean of the George Washington University Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. Today I'm talking with Assistant Professor Andrew Thompson of Political Science. Welcome, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you for having me.
So based on your research, tell us about the threat and anxiety and how that's impacting attitudes about democracy.
My work is specifically on sort of perceptions of the way that racial demographics in the United States are changing. There are ways in which Americans think about the future of the country, and I kind of divvy these up into three different categories that all kind of motivate one another and lead to really sort of like shifting senses of threat regarding like the future of the country. One is prediction, one is people of color, and then the third is partisanship. So on the level of prediction, we're unable to predict what the future of race looks like, but despite that, people still infer what the future might look like. And then secondly, it's about people of color specifically. So when Americans think by and large about people of color, they think about Black Americans. And then their inferences based on people of color kind of then lead to, it elicits their sentiments of, sort of anti-Black racism, stereotypes. And then the third thing is partisanship. And there's an inference, again, that Americans are making, which is to say that so out of that prediction and out of people of color, they infer that Democrats will be at an advantage as the country changes. All of these are all points of uncertainty. We can't predict the future. But despite that, people still make this inference, and like that, on that point, that's where they're sort of the center of their anxiety is sort of being elicited. And of course, you can imagine those who are going to be most threatened or expressively threatened by these sorts of changes, if they're making these inferences, are Republicans, because they think that their party will lose into the future, which is then driving their anti-democratic attitudes.
So what is the impact of that feeling of threat and anxiety? How does that manifest itself then in terms of, say, support for different kinds of policies?
Yeah, so the most major manifestation of it is, unfortunately, in violent attitudes. Political elites are taking these violent attitudes from the public and basically then funneling them into skepticism of democratic elections, basically like wants for overturning elections, attempts at voter suppression, things of that sort. So the idea here is that violence is the at least initial mechanism, and then it leads to other senses of anti-democratic views.
So my impression is that feelings of anxiety have increased in the last half decade to decade. Is that true? Is that been something that's been changing in recent years?
I think as it relates to the national conversation, absolutely. And the problem as it relates to the future changes to the country, these are all just based upon perceptions of the future of the country. None of these need to have a grounding. People are no longer thinking of this in this local context, but instead are basically inferring that, in the same way that they would say before, like, there goes the neighborhood, it's there goes the nation. It's no longer the idea that there is, there will be simply a local shift. It is that the entire country is bound to change, which they're willing to effectively flip democracy because they're concerned about the future.
So what can be done to shift some of those attitudes?
This is a tough question. Political parties change. Coalitions come in and out of parties. Parties develop different sort of strategies. And so because of all of those things, there is no way to predict which party is going to be at an advantage over time. The amount of people that exist at any given place does not necessarily determine who is then going to be represented within government, because the second step that's required is that there needs to be turnout, there needs to be participation.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson, for sharing your insights with us today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.